Welcome to Mock 10 Sports in this August 21st, 2023 episode. Glad you're joining us here today. Again, you can feel it, people. You can finally breathe. We've made it through April, May, June, July, most of August. College football is officially here. It's officially here. It is officially, there's no other way to say it. I mean, for the most part, schools started around the Southeastern Conference today. Fall camps have been wrapping up for most of these SEC schools throughout this week and last week. And football will be played this weekend. Crazy to say that. Fired up to hear it. SEC football specifically will be played this weekend in Nashville, in the Music City. We got Hawaii returning the trip to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt went out there week 0 last year, kind of put it on the Warriors last year, but things kicked off 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone in Nashville this weekend. But hey, if you hadn't seen it, there will also be a little construction. I'd like to show you. I'd like to share that with you real fast in case you have missed it. Via Jim Weber's Twitter here. You see the construction here in the background of Vanderbilt's stadium right here, Memorial Stadium. It's not finished, and I know a lot of people have been giving Vanderbilt flack for that, but hey, it's progress in the right direction, man. This is an academic school, whatever you want to call it. It is what it is. They're building, they're adding on to the stadium. It's going to be fine. It's not ideal, but Alabama, when I was in school, had the construction going on, I believe, in the South End Zone. Arkansas's had construction, I think, back in 2014, 15. Texas. It happens. It's just a positive. They're updating the facility at Vanderbilt. You'll just see some cranes in the background this weekend, but hey, it's fine. Balls be on the field. Toe meets leather. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun weekend. We got SEC football going on. I'll stop sharing this with you for just a minute. Perfect. But no, we got it. 6:30 Saturday night, Hawaii, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt currently sits as a 17-point favorite against the Warriors, but we'll break down that on Thursday's episode. We'll get to that on Thursday's episode. But as always, we'll also get you some camp intel as much as we can from any SEC teams. I'm not just going to give you the boring stuff you already know. Anything that's new, I'm going to bring to the table. So you know, I'm not going to have any updates on all 14 teams, but the teams that did have some updates from talking to people, I'll bring that back up. And most important, this was the second and most important scrimmage happened this past Saturday for most teams. There'll be some surprising news you'll hear, some not surprising news you'll hear, and then a lot of whispers about a lot of drops from a lot of teams' wide receiver corps this fall camp. I thought there was no one better, so we got a guest today. I thought there was no one better to bring on to expound on coaching wide receivers at the college level than Tyler Siskey, wide receiver coach. He's been at Arkansas State, been at South Alabama, along with being the director of personnel and running recruiting departments at both Ole Miss and Alabama under Nick Saban. So Tyler will be a good guest. Technically, Tyler is my employer, Quick U Recruiting, but massive background in college football. He's one of the unique people that has an insight from the coaching side of things, but also from a personnel side of things. Like, I was on the personnel side of things. I don't have a coaching background. I feel like I know X's and O's pretty well, but Tyler's been on both sides. So I thought he'd be a good person to bring on. He has a wide receiver background. And I mean, you've heard Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, Brian Kelly mentioning drops. I mean, is that a lot of transfer portal kids coming in, not really being on the same page with the quarterbacks, whether that's a transfer quarterback coming in or the wide receivers being a transfer and just not being used to not having that camaraderie or that timing or togetherness with that quarterback that they can bring together. Fired up to hear what Tyler has to say about that. And before I get questions, I know it's going to happen. Yes, I saw Greg Sankey, what he had to say about changing the college football playoff format after everything going on with the conferences expanding. But I'm not going to get to that because there's football in the air. So we're going to get to that. Let's get to camp intel immediately before we get Tyler on. Starting off with the defending SEC West champs, the LSU Tigers. They were open to the media for their second scrimmage. Heard a lot of great things and some not so great things. The secondary was not great. It's very transfer portal heavy. Again, it's been a concern of mine, a concern of a lot of people. But again, they got lucky a little bit too, because I hear there were a lot of drops in that game. Remember what I said? There's been a lot of drops around fall camp. We're about to figure out what that is. Mekhi Wingo, big defensive tackle, seems to be performing well. Also bringing an interior pass rush, as I always say, there's nothing more disruptive to a quarterback than an interior pass rush, and you're sitting in his lap. I mean, he can step up in the pocket from an edge rush. If you're in his lap, there's not much he can do about it. So if Mekhi Wingo's bringing some pressure from the interior side of the defensive line, that's awesome. Mason Smith was dressed out but did not participate. Don't know why. I get the concept of getting him to the season, and that's kind of a big thing now with a lot of programs. Kind of practice like the pros is kind of what it is. But this is a guy that hadn't had any live snaps. He was a non-contact guy in the spring. He needs reps. It's too late now. Probably should have happened at the beginning of fall camp, first scrimmage. But Mason Smith not getting any reps, it's doing him a disservice, in my opinion. That's a topic for another day. Also, shocker here, Mason Taylor and Malik Neighbors are going to be key this year to Jalen Daniels. It seems like he doesn't overly trust anyone after that. That's going to be on wide receivers Brian Thomas and Kyron Lacy. They're going to have to change that narrative, because if Neighbors or Mason Taylor, God forbid, go down with an injury, doesn't sound like he's overly comfortable with anyone right now. But again, I think LSU has the least amount of questions going into the season of anyone else in the SEC West outside of the secondary. But I don't really overly see a top 40. I don't see it. Again, if Mason Smith isn't who we think he's going to be because he hadn't played in a full year, someone goes down at the interior of the defensive tackle, at the interior of the defensive line, that's not going to be good for LSU. So that's just some intel from the scrimmage there. Secondary is still a concern, but a lot of weapons. Jaden Daniels going to do a lot of things. Apparently they started off a little rough, but hey, they finished off strong. They practiced for, I think, an hour and a half before they really got to that 40, 60 play scrimmage. But that's it with LSU. Moving to the two-time defending national champs, Kirby Smart, or University of Georgia. Kirby Smart named Carson Beck the starter this week after the Saturday scrimmage. Not shocking. This will be his fourth year in the program. Let's just say he knows his way around the Butts-Mehre facility. If you don't know, that's Georgia's football facility. But this was expected. Not a surprise at all. It was not a real run-heavy scrimmage just because a lot of the running backs are out. This is very pass-heavy. Kendall Milton, I saw, did not participate. Branson Robinson was in a non-contact jersey. This is really kind of the Andrew Paul show. But again, not a lot of carries up front. It allowed Georgia a little bit to mix and match a little bit in the pass pro, get some different rotations for the offensive line. Guys like Ernest Green, Xavier Truss moved around a lot. Young guys like Dylan Fairchild, Austin Blasky, guys like that stepping up. Trying to think anything else from Georgia defensively. I mean, look out. Mykel Williams, breakout season this year. Be on the lookout. And I don't really like to tout up a bunch of freshman defensive linemen when it comes to SEC. I really don't. I don't like to tout them up much. But look for true freshman Jordan Hall from Jacksonville, West Side in Jacksonville, I believe. I remember recruiting him when I was at UCF when he was a young pup. Dude is disruptive, living in the backfield. I think he had a sack and 2 tackles for loss in their scrimmage on Saturday. I don't know what unit, what team, if that was the first, second, or third team. I think a little bit combo of all three. But the guy lives in the backfield. Watch out as the season ends. Georgia could start a little slow this year, but I don't think, again, as I mentioned, the schedule's not going to be there for maybe to then bite them in the butt. Maybe that South Carolina game's a little closer than we think. But I think by the end of the year, Georgia's going to be rocking and rolling. But that's some key things to take from Georgia's camp. Carson Beck, no shocker, going to be starting quarterback. Again, Georgia's running back room, I don't think it overly has a dude in it. It's got some nicks and bruises right now. It was more the Andrew Paul show, trying to get Kendall Milton and Branson Robinson to game day, from a weekend, 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks from now. And again, Mykel Williams, the second-year guy out of Columbus, Georgia, Hardaway High School, going to be versatile, going to be dynamic. And then the true freshman, Jordan Hall, watch out for them. But heading over to Tuscaloosa, the University of Alabama, the Crimson Tide. I mean, if all you hear about is just the quarterback competition down in Tuscaloosa these days. And as of this moment, it's Jalen Milroe's job until it's not, according to people at the Malmore facility. Key phrase, hear me out here, people. Until it's not. Until it's not. 1 second. It's until it's not. Sorry, I'm Siskey seeing if he was about to get on. This is going to come down to, it's going to be an audition against Texas. It's going to come down second week against Texas in about 2.5 weeks against his home state, Jalen Milroe. It's his second shot. He started against Texas A&M last year, but this will be it. He's from Tompkins High School in Katy, Texas. For you people that aren't real familiar from a geography standpoint of the state of Texas, Houston metropolitan area. But this is going to come down to how he performs in this Texas game. So it's not over yet, but I think he makes the start. You'll see all of them against Middle Tennessee State. I think you're going to see him get the start against Texas as well. Saban said he's not overly pleased. He's not overly pleased with the wide receivers. It's just not an over. I think Siskey's going to come on here in a bit and talk about it. There's just not, I think he's just trying not to get in their heads a little much. From people you're talking to, reports you've heard, there were some drop balls. There were some drop balls. Guys like Isaiah Bond and Malik Benson dropped some touchdown passes, I think from Tyler Buckner and Jalen Milroe. I think just Saban's trying not to get too down on these guys. While the defense is going to be better this year, though. I think the defense is going to be better this year. The receivers have a drop issue right now, but the defense is going to be better. There's just no doubt, just due to a couple reasons. I think the physicality is one. The ability to force turnovers, which has been a huge emphasis this offseason. More discipline overall, and just the rule changes. Just less snaps due to the clock running all the time. And this wasn't a bad defense last year. I mean, people give a lot of flack to Pete Golden, but they only gave up 18 points per game last year and finished in the top 10 in scoring defense. It's not – there's only so much room for growth, but I think there is just off the ability from having discipline, not jumping off sides, not getting neutral zone infractions, forcing turnovers. You haven't seen the Alabama force a lot of turnovers the last 2 years. That used to be a major trait under Kirby Smart and Jeremy Pruitt when they were coordinators. But again, I think the rule changes will just naturally allow them not to have to face as many plays, as many snaps. Then the pass rush has a chance to be very good. At the very least, it's going to be good. I think the secondary, at least the starters with Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terry and Arnold, are as good as they had in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, some people may claim 2020, hey, look, they won the national championship, but Pat Surtain, he's the best one they've had. But Josh Jobe, I mean, you got Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terry and Arnold are better than him. And watch out for the second special teams guys. I've been mentioning it, talked to Will Reichard, but the punter, James Burnham, having a real nice camp. Those guys are going to be X factors in regards to getting points if the offense stalls out in the red zone and flipping the field position. But before we move to Arkansas, let me send the link over here to my guy, Coach Siskey. We'll get him on in just a minute. Right there. Perfect. All right, moving to Arkansas. Moving to Fayetteville. A couple more teams to cover before we get Tyler Siskey on. It sounds like Arkansas, just like most teams right now, kind of tired of hitting one another. Sounds like a little bit of a scuffle broke out, which is fine. It's normal these times of year. Plus, it was very hot hurting Fayetteville, and they ran 140, 150 play scrimmage. So Sam Pittman got what he wanted out of his Razorbacks. Also, Isaiah Satigna, the track star. I remember recruiting him. He's from Fayetteville. His parents, I believe, are the track and field coaches at the University of Arkansas, but explosive in the scrimmage. I think he returned – I was reading the opening kickoff, live kickoffs. And when I say live, sometimes they're kickoffs and just getting looks, and there's no tackling, no contact. This was a live kickoff return, to open up the scrimmage for a touchdown. This is a guy that KJ Jefferson is going to need to step up from a vertical play threat downfield. This will be key. That's good news if you're a Razorback fan. Guys that have a real feel for the team that you talk to, guys like Trey Biddy, I feel like this will be one of the best and deepest defensive lines they had in a long time. And that's kind of a compliment towards the continuity with Deke Adams. I heard a stat, Arkansas had like 5 different defensive line coaches in like 4 or 5 years, I think, after Sam Pittman's first year. Yeah, after Sam Pittman's first year, because they had Derek LeBlanc. But Deke Adams has been here. This will be his second year in a row. So there hadn't really been a lot of continuity in that defensive line position room from a coach standpoint. So therefore, it's going to be a revolving door. People are going to be in and out of that, not only from a coach standpoint, but from a player standpoint. But Arkansas likes their defensive line. That's what I've gathered from that scrimmage. Everything else didn't really feel the need to bring it up, stuff you already know. But the defensive line, they like it. They think it's one of the deepest groups they've had in the last decade. But moving to Kentucky, Deion Walker, here he has been a force on the interior. Mark Stoops had to throw him out of the second scrimmage just to allow the offense to get some plays off. Going into his second season, he's a name to remember. Stoops also mentioned the Cats got to get better in short yardage situations on offense. That scares me a little bit. No need to overly panic. But, again, their season, and I got them tying second place in the East, and they have them having the tiebreaker with Tennessee do the head-to-head. They got to get rid of the pre-snap penalties. And they have to get more physical, and they have to convert in short yardage situations. For Kentucky to go win 9 games like I think they're capable of, that's got to improve. Not to overreact, but it's something that Mark Stoops mentioned in his press conference after Saturday's practice. And then like I mentioned, pre-snaps penalties, they're not going to beat a team like Tennessee if they keep beating themselves, or a team like Alabama, which I think it's a weird trap game for Alabama. I'm not saying I predicted they're not going to lose it. But again, Kentucky's offensive line the whole season comes down to them. We want to see a little bit more improvement. Just a couple more things to go over with a couple teams. South Carolina, Apparently, offensive line is apparently impressed a little bit in their second scrimmage. And then the last thing, didn't gather much more than Spencer Rattler, I think, is having a hell of a camp. Him and the Dow Loggins marriage should be really good. But the receiver here, Omega Blake has had a big camp at wide receiver. A third-year guy should step up big time this year. Should really help some other guys. And so that would be big to help Juice Wells out, because I think he needs a more consistent guy to be his second guy. So maybe Blake steps up this year. But that's a couple of things I've heard from South Carolina camp, not digging deep there. Ole Miss, just some notable additions and subtractions. Corey Coleman, it looked like the linebacker Corey Coleman, transferred from TCU, was on the roster last year. Inside backer, was at practice today this morning. He was suspended for the last, I think, week and a half, 2 weeks. He was back at practice today. And then corner, DeAndre Prince, going to be a starter, was arrested for DUI, I believe, Sunday morning. He was not at practice today. Don't know the future for him. Not going to speculate on that, but that's something to keep note, just a little addition and subtraction. This is a defense that can't be losing bodies. They're not deep enough. That's why I have them picked to finish 7th in the West. Again, Ole Miss isn't going to be a bad team. You're gonna hear them when I'm talking here in a minute about the top 5 games in the SEC I'm most confident about, or involving SEC teams that I'm most confident about. Ole Miss is going to be in there in an optimistic, positive outlook from that perspective. But Ole Miss on defense cannot be losing bodies. DeAndre Prince would be a big loss if that's for the season. I don't know that. But again, Corey Coleman back at practice, DeAndre Prince not there. And then finally, before we get to Tyler Siskey, talk a little wide receiver play, a little SEC play. Mississippi State continue to hear good. I wouldn't be ready to say great things about the defense yet, but the front 7, they got a lot of experience up front. If the safety position gets it figured out, look out. Now, that's going to be between Alabama transfer Marcus Banks, Kentucky transfer Jacoby Albert, and then Chris Keys. 2 of them need to step up, if not all 3, for the depth standpoint. But here, if Mississippi State can get the safety position figured out, the defense is going to be pretty good this year. Defense is going to – and this is a defense for the most part. It held Quinshon Judkins in check last year in the Egg Bowl. So I like the upside of the Mississippi State defense, but they have to get that back end, and specifically the safety positions, figured out. But let's get my guy on the show here, Coach Tyler Siskey. Coach Cisco, what up, baby?
What it is.
Where we at right now, man? We at the house?
We're at the man cave, man. We're getting a little we got the Commanders and Ravens on. We got the Braves on. We're rocking a little bit. Got my man Noxie over here watching some ball with me, so we're doing what we do.
Perfect. We got you live. Appreciate you joining in on. Everybody who doesn't know Tyler Siskey, been a position coach at Arkansas State, South Alabama, specifically wide receivers. Am I correct there, Coach Cisco?
That's it.
Yep. And then he's been running recruiting departments, director of player personnel at Alabama for the 2013-14 seasons for Nick Saban. 2 different tours at the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, with Hugh Freeze initially at 12 staff. Matt Luke brought him back on as an associate AD. And like I said before the show, Tyler Siskey has a unique experience where there's a lot of personnel guys, there's a lot of coaches, there's not many guys that have done both. And I think you're a unique perspective of that. Coach Cisco, anything else? Just tell us a little bit about yourself. You were obviously the COO, founder of Quick U Recruiting right now, my employer. But just tell us a little about, for people that don't know you, just tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started in football, and kind of your experiences at Alabama, South Alabama, Arkansas State, and Ole Miss.
Yeah, I'll sum up the last 20 years in about 13 seconds here. But no, I ran recruiting. I got into recruiting probably about halfway through my career. Before staffs got really big, I was the recruiting coordinator as a position coach, right? When staffs were normal size, before they got 55 people in the staff room. And then when I came to Ole Miss with Freeze, that would have been in 12. And
12,
yeah, so the years better than I do. Recruiting got big, and then I kind of did I went off the field and started doing recruiting, but I really didn't change anything. I just kind of did what I always did. But then when going to Alabama is when I kind of first learned how a big operation runs, right, and how to put everything together and roll from there. But yeah, it's I've always been a coach at heart. Never really changed anything from a personnel standpoint, and that's probably where I'm a little bit different than everybody else that's done it. Is I did it more from coming from the coach's side than I did from the personnel side, but that was the personnel side was the part that I probably had room to grow when I first started, and just learning the ins and outs and evaluating players and Kevin Steele, who's now the defense coordinator at Alabama, and Joe Pendry, who's still obviously around, are two guys that really took me under the wing and really got me into that system as far as learning how to evaluate players.
Yeah, which leads me into my question here. How do you think, 'cause like I said, I think you're unique from that standpoint. There's not maybe you and Jeff Collins ever, but you did it more in modern, I think, recruiting than Coach Collins did.
Right.
How do you think that it helped your career from you being able to communicate to coaches from like, hey, this is where we're seeing it, almost like a special team coach a little bit, the roster from 1 through 85 or 1 through 30 out, whatever you want to call it, including the walk-ons. How do you think that affected your career, helped your career just from an overall standpoint as a coach?
Well, you got to see things differently, right? I feel that sometimes in the personnel world, sometimes you look and you see it all the time in the NFL, right? Everybody looks at just numbers and, how fast is the guy? How tall is he? You still have to play football. And, that's what coaches see. Coaches, a lot of times, sometimes you have to protect them from themselves. Is they want guys that are easy to coach, or this guy is very productive or whatever. And there's got to be a marriage of both, right? And so, what helped me a little bit was with the communication of the coaches. I think by the time I got into recruiting and doing the personnel full time, most everybody that I worked with knew me as a coach. And so they kind of communicated with me a little bit differently. And so I was able to kind of marry both sides and ease that transition. And then I think it's really important. One thing that probably helped me better than anything is somebody in the room besides the head coach needs to know about everybody on the board, right? And have, unbiased opinions, because, as I was coaching receivers and I recruited the state of Alabama for 20 years, I would go in, I would like really push like one player, right? So if I had one kid in my area, I'm pushing him because that's the guy I want to get past. Well, somebody has to tell me, hey, Tyler, that's awesome that you're pushing him, but that guy you're not pushing is the second best guy on our board. And you may not realize it when you're an assistant coach, is because you're just concentrating on your one area. So I think that's really one thing that helped me a ton.
For sure. So transition to the coaching side. We're putting the whistle back on here, Coach. From a standpoint of, I addressed it at the beginning of the show, there's been a lot, I guess you said, rumors, reports. I mean, even the coaches have came out in press conferences and said they've had drops in these camps, whether it's due to transfer portal, guys not having the summer to work with each other. Again, you coach the wide receivers. There's no one better to talk about this. How did you handle, is it a yip thing? Like, how did you handle it as a position coach when you had a receiver or a group of receivers that were struggling to catch the football and within a certain, we're this close to the season? How did you handle that?
Well, it's one of my pet peeves. Talked about it a little bit today on our show today, is don't ever be the catch the ball coach, right? Everybody, is this a PG rated show or can I get crazy?
You can say whatever you want, brother.
So, but you can't, I'd probably get canceled doing some of the stuff I did today, but you can't be a catch the ball coach. I mean, everybody in the building knows that you drop the ball. The people who know nothing about football know that you're supposed to catch the football. So don't just yell at a guy, hey, catch the ball. I'm a big believer in that, because if he's got something fundamentally wrong with how he's catching the ball, then teach him what he's doing wrong. Don't just say catch the ball. How about, is his hand placement bad? Sometimes you don't say anything. Sometimes it's a contested catch. It's a bang, bang play, and maybe he gets hit before he can get it put away. Or maybe you need to tuck the ball faster. Maybe you need to catch the ball away from your body. One thing from a catching the ball fundamentally standpoint that a lot of kids, so when you get them, I mean, even really good players like to catch the ball with their body, right? Yeah. And so it works great in high school because they're so much better than everybody they're playing against. They have a lot of separation. Well, once you get to college, that separation closes and there's not as much. Now you get to the pros, there is no separation. So as you get older and if you continue to advance, the separation gets less and less from the DB. So the point of the drill is getting the ball away from your body. Well, so many kids in high school catch it with their body, and I always try to explain to them, like, the tip of a ball is a bullet, right? And so you have to have a flat surface, just the same way that Kevlar works, right? Is you got to have a flat surface where that point is, and you got to be able, so if the ball's above, you got to have your hands above, and then it works in a rotation with your hand placement. Well, I think there's three major components when you're catching a football that get lost. And one is you got to catch it with your eyes, right? That's number one. You can do so much work in the off season with a tennis ball machine. Like we would put numbers on a tennis ball machine and make them read the numbers that was being shot. And you do one hand, two hands, left hand, right hand, two hands, to really watch it all the way in, just like baseball, right? You want to hit it, watch the ball all the way to the bat. Obviously hand placement where your hands are. So if it's above your waist, up, down, and moving your arms like a jumping jack, right? And then, the last part is obviously catching it away from your body. And that goes back to what we were just talking about with contact. So I think I told you this morning, we were joking about it this morning, but I would do, this is where I'd probably get canceled these days. They would probably outlaw me, but I literally would take the jugs machine, make the player take his helmet off, and I would turn the jugs machine up to 60 miles an hour and point it right at their face. It's amazing how quick they will get their hands out away from their body, and because it's going to hit them in the face if they don't. And yeah. I know this is going to shock everybody, but in 20 years, I never hit a kid in the face. They always got the ball, right? And then last part was to shoot. I'd shoot it at their nuts. They'd get their hands turned over and away from the body, and you do that for 10 minutes, and then it's over. They don't ever mess it up ever again. So, but for me, that's the big part, is just make it. It's a routine play. Make it routine, right? I mean, you see baseball players boot the ball in the infield. You don't go, don't make an error. I mean, it happens. So just don't make it a bigger issue than it has to be.
From a standpoint of the evaluation process of bringing someone into the program that's a wide receiver, where do you think most schools miss on wide receivers in the evaluation process, in your opinion?
I had two things that I kind of looked at, that would kind of, I looked at, my big thing was balance and body control. That was probably my number one criteria when evaluating receivers, is people get caught up with speed, right? And don't get me wrong, speed is important. It's cool, right? But I was okay if I had a slower guy, if they had great balance and body control. But with that, they had to have great one-step change of direction. I think you can teach anyone that's athletic. I think they can come through and sink their hips and come in and out of routes if they're athletic enough. But one step change direction or zone cuts, are really important. And then balance and body control. Like so many guys on jump balls, you see just lose all aspect of body control, so going up and getting the 50-50 ball, the back shoulder ball, all those things that when you're able to you're going to have to contort your body to make plays, especially on back shoulder balls. I think that's really important. But I think people get they're looking for dead speed guys, which it helps. Don't get me wrong. I like them too. But, we were able to make, we had a really good room at Arkansas State. We had a really, really good room at South Alabama. We had a ton of those guys go to the NFL. And we really didn't have to beat a whole lot of people on them, right? So I remember, Jalen Wayne, who's playing with Browns right now. We beat West Florida on him, and Jalen Tolbert, who's with the Cowboys. We had Jamarius Wade. We had Malik Stanley. We had, Jordan McRae. We had Kawan Baker's playing with the Saints. This is at South Alabama of all places. So you got, again, these guys aren't famous NFL players, but they got a cup of coffee in the league and are good enough to go play there, which, a lot of receivers, that was probably the deepest receiver room I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, no, and Cisco, when we were at the personnel symposium last week with Alonzo Highsmith up there talking about evaluating, he was bringing up receivers and saying, yeah, speed's great, but he brought up what you said, balance, body control. Like what he said, he noticed the thing it translates the best from the college game to the NFL was their ability, the balance, body control to get the yards after the catch. He's like, I feel like that translates. If they can do it in college, like it usually translates well to the NFL game. So it's like you said, it's not just straight line speed. Oh man, this kid ran a 10-800 meter. It's not just that from that standpoint. But before we move on here, just let everybody know Tyler Siskey here from McCready and Siskey. Cisco just moved over to the Disrupt Media, correct, over there. We guys used to run the next round.
I had a first show today. It started off great. We had technical difficulty. We've been pumping it up for about a week. We had technical difficulty with links getting it started, but we got it cranked up. We go live Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 2:00. But we had a really good crowd today, and looking forward to it. And with it's all started by Ryan Brown, Jim Dunaway, and Lance Taylor of the Next Round guys over in Birmingham. But we'll have show with on the same channel be Tom Luganville, Peter Burns, forgive me, Daniel Jeremiah, and Brock Heward. We're all be on the same channel. doing some stuff there. So it's going to be if you like college football, it's a really good channel.
No, that's exciting stuff. And I just want to throw that in before we get it. Just a few more questions, get you out of here. Again, appreciate your time, brother. But with the transfer portal being heavy, now we're putting your GM hat back on. You had to put the whistle up. We're putting the jug machines up. Kid got hit in the face. We got to take it off for a minute.
I did. Have I ever told you that? Did I ever tell you a story where I took my brother-in-law, cut his ear off with it? He wanted to try it one day. Yeah, I got in trouble because he had to get his ear stitched up. So he tried the jug machine and got hit with a seam going by his ear because he moved his head out of the way.
Good gracious. Well, in this story, you wouldn't be taking him.
No.
So your GM hat is back on here.
Yep.
You are running a personnel department. You're making all the decisions like you are for Matt, Luke, and Hugh Freeze here. What's your strategy from a roster building standpoint? Or give me you don't have to if you don't want to, but just a percentage of maybe portal kids, high school kids. What is Tyler Siskey's strategy now? Now you've been out for 3 or 4 years. What would be your strategy in today's game? I'd love to hear this answer.
I think it depends on where you're at, right? I think what level, if I'm at South, I'm at Arkansas State, I'm at Ole Miss, I'm at Alabama, what level, where am I located? But if I had everything rolling, I would take as many high school kids as possible. I think people forget there's a reason they're in the portal. That's probably the biggest thing is, guys that are really good players and are really happy and productive. Those guys don't go in the portal very often. And if they do go in the portal, can you afford them? Are you at a place where you can afford to get them? Right. And so I just think with the culture, I think culture is so important on a team. And this is going back to the coach's part, right? Is I think culture is so important. Mental, physical toughness, competitive character. I think those are things that are so important when you're putting together a team. And I would rather build that at the start. Now, the catch-22 is if you're at a South Alabama or an Arkansas State and you get those kids and you develop them, then you're at risk of losing them. If you get really good, they get really good. And that was the thing where, I don't know if my career would actually be where it's at. I don't know if Hugh Freeze is at Auburn right now if the portal's around because we would have been rated. You know what I mean? Because we did a really good job. I thought with Steve Roberts was the head coach at Arkansas State when I first got back, and I thought we did a great job evaluating players and got some really good play, like Demario Davis, right? So starting Mike Backer, captain for the New Orleans Saints. I mean, he's from Brandon, Mississippi. He had one FBS offer, and that was Arkansas State. I mean, we had, we took so many kids that, MD Jennings, we had all these NFL players on our team. You didn't know it at the time, right? But we ended up with all these NFL players on our team. We would have never kept those guys in the past. You know what I mean? Like they would have gone. Don Jones from Town Creek, Alabama, he'd been gone. You know what I mean? He's one of the best nickels I've ever been around. Alex Carrington was a 3rd-round pick. You just go on and on and on. I mean, James Bradbury, who's an all-pro in the NFL, he was a corner. We signed him as a corner. I mean, we don't keep those guys, right? And so do you end up with the same players and able to win and move on? I don't think – because I don't think we win because I think all our players are gone. It's a whole different time, and that's the part that's negative. But if I could, I would still build it with high school kids. But that's why I'm a big proponent of the transfer rule being amended. I don't believe in immediate eligibility. They can transfer if you want to. You're not preventing them from transferring. But I'm a big believer that, at worst, if they want to be immediately eligible, graduate. That brings graduation rates back up. And if that's what they want to do after that, you at least had them for 3 years, right? So that it's just a catch-22. But if I had to do all over again, like if I was at Ole Miss, I would have liked my crack at it at Ole Miss now.
Yeah.
Because we were coming off probation. No 20. If I didn't have a 25 and had the portal, we could have had some fun. I mean, we could have we would have won very quickly because there was a lot of issues that I would like to fix immediately. One of them being on defense at linebacker. I think in the past they had thrown a bunch of stuff up against the wall and hope it stuck at linebacker. I think we could have fixed that. I think, instead, on offense, we had to get all these young kids on offense. Ends up being really good players, right? We had to get all these young players on offense. And back then it wasn't going just to say take a JUCO kid. That doesn't solve the problem. So we had to build it young. I would have liked my crack at it, and I would like my crack at the NIL stuff too. That would have been fun.
No, that's right. You talk about it in the office. That's why I brought it up. It's like he'll have an interesting take on this question. But Cisco, before we get you out of here,
yeah, you're good.
What's your thoughts heading into the 2023 season, specifically the SEC? Any teams you like, who you're kind of down on, who you expect to win the East-West? I mean, anything you want to just take before you get out of here? Just SEC show, anything your thoughts head into 23?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun year. I think it's probably more balanced top to bottom than it's been in a long time. Saying who's going to win and who's going to lose and all that stuff. Like you look at the West, I mean,
It's as wide open as it's been in a while.
You know, I was talking today. I'm not going to be the guy that sits here and says Alabama's going to not win games and all that stuff. I'm going to ride with my guy, Coach Saban, until the wheels fall off. Right? I mean, he's good at what he does. But I think LSU is going to be good. I think, they get their corner issues solidified, and they will. They got good players. I think LSU is going to be good. I like Texas A&M. I think they're going to be good. I literally like things about everybody. I think Ole Miss can roll out 11 guys on offense to give anybody in the country problems. Depth will be the issue with them. Can they stay healthy? Same thing on defense. They got so many new pieces. How quickly, do they come together as far as understanding scheme when the live bullets are firing, right? So, it's on. Anytime you put in a new defensive scheme and you got that many new players, run fits are a huge concern. And they're already, that's what's coming, right? So, are they going to be able to fit the run? They're going to be light at backer. Those things. Auburn, man, I said this on the show a couple of weeks ago. I think Auburn's going to have more to say about who wins the West than any team.
Yeah.
Because I think they can literally beat anybody. And Hugh Freeze will. He will beat somebody he's not supposed to beat.
Yeah.
So he'll end up – that'll have something to say about it. And then in Arkansas, Sam Pittman's one of my favorite coaches on the planet. I love the guy. I think he's awesome. I like what they're doing. I just think the West is wide open. And then State, obviously, I'm a big fan of Zach Arnett. Barber, big fan of him offensively. I think they're going to do some really good things, be solid defense. So a lot of questions over there about who wins, right?
Yeah.
The East, same thing with the East, man. I can literally go through and say positives about every single team that you really like. I'm probably a little higher. The two that I'm probably in the East higher on the most is Florida.
Yeah.
I may be the only person in the planet that's high on Florida, but
you're taking the over in 5.5, huh, Cisco?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not even checking up on that. I'm a big believer in Billy Napier. I think Billy's an exceptional coach. He's an exceptional program builder. He's exceptional at establishing culture. I'm a big fan in Billy. And then the other team that I'm probably a little bit higher on the most that's kind of sleepwalking through and nobody's talking about it is Kentucky.
Yeah.
I think Liam Cohen coming back. They definitely missed him last year. And you just saw with Will Levis and the production drop to senior as a junior when you had Liam as the coordinator. And then Devin Leary, a lot of SEC people don't know anything about Leary. I mean, the guy was undefeated at NC State. This guy's a baller, man.
Yep.
He's legit. And
they have great skill guys on the edge. Yeah. Probably the best they've ever had.
I'm all in on Kentucky as well, but here's the problem. I like South Carolina, I like everybody, right? And so the problem is that you're high on these teams. This is where I have a tough time because I'm high on these teams. But here in a couple of weeks, they're going to have to play each other. And there's going to be a team that wins and a team that loses, right? And so, I mean, if you may end up, and that's why my whole thing with the West is like it's all about scheduling, man. I mean, you look at the West. I mean, they could end up, cannibalizing themselves.
Yeah.
And have, really good football teams that don't make the playoff. And I think that's what, I said this the whole time. I said, everybody wants this 12-team playoff. Be careful what you ask for because you're going to end up with let's say Alabama, for whatever reason, let's say they go 10-2 this year and they don't get the playoff. But if in a 12-team playoff, they're in there and you're getting prime Alabama towards the playoff, you don't want those problems. I mean, who wants to play those guys in the first round, right? And so you're going to end up with some teams that get hot towards the end of the year, and I'm more probably excited about next year with the playoffs than I am this year. But there's going to be some good teams get left out in the league for sure.
No, Cisco, you're right in regards to the West. I have Ole Miss finishing last, but it's 6-6.
I
got the Rebs 7th, baby. But again, they're 6-6. It's a ball. I got every team in the West getting the 6 wins. Not now. I don't have every team in the East doing that, but I'm with you. The West is. It's as open. Now I think it's a 3-team race to actually win the division. But again, from top to – I think you could throw 4 through 7 really between Arkansas, Ole Miss, State, and Auburn in a hat and pull their names, and you could be like, yeah, they finished 4th or 7th. I'd believe you.
Yeah, Ole Miss's season is going to depend on how healthy they are, right? So
Yeah.
the thing, they will be in every single game because they got I don't care who the quarterback is, they got plenty of them, and they're always going to have a good player at quarterback. And when you have a good quarterback, you're going to be in games. So, if they can stay healthy and then defensively get the run fits and things like that cleaned up and figured out early in the season, and they got time, right? They open up with Mercer. Then they go to Tulane, which will be an interesting game. Not so much. I think they're going to win convincingly that game. And the sneaky one.
Yeah, you've been saying it.
I've been saying it. I need to remind myself to say this tomorrow on the show. But the sneaky one is Georgia Tech coming in here the third week. They got good toward the end of the year. They started playing well.
Week before the Alabama game.
Hey, week before the Alabama game. I can see that one being a little bit sleepy game. And they better. That's not going to be an easy. I think that's the hardest one of the three starting games. And then they go on a roll, man. They got Alabama, LSU, Arkansas. They go to Auburn. Yeah. But I'm here for the Ole Miss to Auburn game on the 21st. 21st of October is my favorite weekend of the year.
Oh, so dude, that's a top 3 game in the conference this year. Just due to
we got Alabama. We got Alabama, Tennessee. We got Auburn, Ole Miss, and we got Penn State, Ohio State. Same day.
You got your guy off McCready and Siskey Darty getting married that day, man.
Oh man, my guy, good dude, man. I was joking with him about getting married on Dave, but he texted me after the show. I was like, I'm just kidding, man. Congratulations, but I told him to get used to it. It's you get married, you have to do things like that. So it is what it is.
Shoot. Cisco, I appreciate you joining us, man. We had Tyler Siskey, former college wide receivers coach, also dabbled in the personnel world, been associate AD at Ole Miss, been the DPP at Ole Miss, been the DPP at Alabama with Nick Saban. Unique perspective. Has been on the coaching side at high levels, obviously been on the higher ends of the personnel side at Alabama and Ole Miss. Currently the CEO, founder of QuickU, my employer, and then also on McCready and Siskey, now on the Disrupt Media company, Cisco, Monday and Tuesday and Thursday from 2 to 3:15ish, right, Central Time.
We'll go from 2 to no later than 3:30. They'll kick us off at 3:30, so we'll try to get out of there. But we start wrapping up at 3, then we go off the rails about something. We'll talk about something crazy, conspiracy theories or something for a little while, and we'll get the hell out of there.
I listen to every show, so I encourage everybody to go out there and watch if you're not already. Great show, McCready and Siskey. Siskey, appreciate you joining us, brother.
Appreciate you, man. Y'all have a great day.
You too, man. Tyler Siskey joining us. Great dude. Work with him every day. We chop it up in the office about this stuff. Thought he'd be a great guest from this perspective, just because he knows so much about wide receiver play. Coach the position. A lot of drops going on in fall camps this from the head coach's mouth. I don't think they're exaggerating players dropping the football. So I wanted him to bring it interesting, the unique jug machine drill. He brought in 60 miles per hour to the face, to the lower area. You need to catch the football. You got to protect the face, and you got to protect the family jewels. So from that perspective, and also, like I keep saying, from a personnel perspective, roster management, he's done it for the GOAT. He's done it for the best of the best, Nick Saban. Hugh Freeze signed a hell of a class here in 13. Robert Kimdinchi, Laramie Tunzel, those guys. That was Siskey in them. And then he was back as an associate AD, like I mentioned, with Matt Luke in the Matt Luke era. Does a fantastic job. Better human being. I appreciate him taking the time and joining us for tonight's episode. Last segment, I promise you. Last segment. Top 5 games I am most confident in heading in to the 2023 season. Week and a half out. We're getting there. Well, we got week 0 Vanderbilt, like I mentioned, Hawaii. We'll break that down Thursday. But these are games, I'm not talking about a Georgia beating Vanderbilt. I'm not talking about that. And these include non-conference games too. But these are games that you'd be like, he's real confident in that one. These are the non-obvious confident games. Again, not the Georgia Vandies, not the Alabama Vandies, even though Alabama doesn't play Vanderbilt, but stuff like that. So let's get into it. We're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in order. Starting off with number 5, my 5th most confident game involving an SEC team this year. It's a conference matchup. November 4th, Kentucky visits Starkville, Mississippi, Davis Wade Stadium, and the Mississippi State Bulldogs. This game's sandwiched in between the Tennessee game, which is going to be a high emotional game, at Lexington at Kroger Field. I think Kentucky's going to get the job done. Coming off a win here. Head on the road to Mississippi State. And you know who's waiting in the wings the next week at Kroger Field is Alabama. It's a sandwich in between the Tennessee and Alabama games at Mississippi State. These two teams play every year. I think State's going to have their safety situation figured out. They're going to be good on defense. I like Mississippi State in this one. I think this is one of Kentucky's 3 losses, and I'm high on Kentucky. It's just where it falls in the schedule, where it falls that late in the year. My 5th ranked game I am most confident in is Mississippi State over Kentucky on November 4th. My number 4 most confident game I am in involving an SEC team. October 21st, the 3rd Saturday in October. Tennessee at Alabama. Alabama usually avenges its losses from the previous years the very next year. 9 times out of 10, like Siskey was saying, if you're going to pick a team to win the West, smart money says go with the go. Go with the guy that has done it more than anybody else. And again, I like LSU. I like Texas A&M this year. And that's a conversation for another day. I already said I think Alabama's going to win the West. But again, at this point, here's another fact. History usually repeats itself. Alabama there's a game they circle every year that they lost the previous game. Because again, Nick Saban's only had 2 undefeated teams at Alabama, 2009 and 2020. So most years they're coming off a loss and they have those games circled. I mean, it's been Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M after the 2012 game. 2013, that was their game. It was really circled. Texas A&M last year, or from 2021, they lost that game at Kyle Field. Barely avenged it last year, but they did. LSU a couple of times, Auburn a couple of times. They usually avenge that loss. And there's usually also, to be fair to Bryant-Denny Stadium, it kind of gets a golf clap mentality around the country. And to be fair, been to a bunch of games there. Growing up, went to school there, played there. Yeah, I mean, it kind of has that a little bit. It's a spoiled fan base. They're used to winning at a high level. But there's also a game or two every year where Bryant-Denny Stadium is probably the loudest stadium in the country on that specific day. It's not often, but it happens a game or two. And this year, 3 of Bama's biggest games this year, Texas, Tennessee, and LSU all at home. I think this Tennessee game on October 21st, the 3rd Saturday in October, will be one of those. I think this is one of those games. And you got to ask yourself, because you talk to anyone at Tennessee, their question mark is, can Joe Milton be consistent this year? So I'm going to ask the question here. Can Joe Milton go get it done in Bryant's court this year? I don't think he does. I think this is a game Alabama has really circled on the schedule this year. Whether they want to believe it or not, they're not talking about it right now. But the off-season conditioning program starting in May through about a month ago into July, probably discussed quite often. This is a game they have circled. I anticipate Alabama win this game, so therefore this is my 4th most confident game in the SEC this year. Alabama getting it done at home with a compliment assist to the crowd, because I think the crowd's going to be raucous in this. You got to think there's a lot of Alabama fans that haven't really, for lack of a better term, thought about Tennessee in the recent future. Now I think finally losing to them kind of refreshed the rivalry. It's been 16 straight years, so it's a refresh of the rivalry. Alabama will be fired up to return that favor for what Tennessee did to Alabama last year. But moving to my 3rd most confident game in the SEC for the 2023 season, the November 18th matchup, Florida at Missouri. First, I think the Gators are going to struggle this year. You heard Tyler Siskey. He was a little higher on Billy Napier than the boys. I'm not. I have them 4-8. They're going to finish 6th in the East, just in front of Vanderbilt. Second, I think Missouri's going to be a pretty good football team if they can get the quarterback situation figured out. Looks like it's going to go into the season. With Brady Cook, Sam Horn, and Jake Garcia. Also, you got to factor this in. I've lived in both these areas before. Dealt with both these kind of kids. It's late November, and it's going to be cold in Columbia, Missouri. Believe me. I looked up the average temperature today. It's going to be in the 40s, if not the 30s. Newsflash here, guys. Florida's warm that time of year, and Florida boys, which is majority of Florida's team, don't like playing in the cold, especially when your season's not going the way you thought it would. End of the year, week before the big rivalry game to end the year against Florida State. I'm confident Missouri gets this done. I don't really like Florida going up there when it's cold. Not really in for bowl contention. Their season's really, they're playing for really just wrecking Florida State's season the next week. There's no real beef between Florida and Missouri. Not a lot of familiarity with their kids. So it's kind of, it's cold. I don't really want to be here, coach. You'd be surprised how often that happens, especially when your season's not going the way you thought it would. So I think Missouri gets this done. It's my 3rd ranked confident game. People are going to be, really? Missouri over Florida? Yeah. I mean, you got to look at the intangibles there, where it's on the schedule. Again, Florida usually doesn't go play great up there because, again, Florida guys are not used to going to play in the cold. Not saying it can't be done. Just for the most part, it can't. Florida guys do not like going to play in that cold weather. So therefore, I like Missouri, and I like Missouri just as an overall team. Again, I like if they can get the quarterback play figured out, they can win 8 games this year. So therefore, my third most confident game in the SEC this year is November 18th. Florida heading Missouri. I think the Tigers and Eli Drinkwitz get it done. We got 2 more left. 2 more left. My second most confident game for the 2023 SEC season. Me and Tyler Siskey talked about it a little bit. Ole Miss at Tulane. We're getting a little out of non-conference here. We're getting a little out of conference into a little non-conference play. For whatever reason, this is a sexy upset pick for the national media. For whatever reason. And I know they got Michael Pratt back, the quarterback, who's a good player. Tulane's coming off a Cotton Bowl win against USC. But I just do not see it. And look, this is coming from somebody who's not overly hot on Ole Miss. I don't think Ole Miss is going to be bad. I think they're going to be a pretty average football team. 6-6. I got them finishing last in the West. But I don't think they're going to be bad. But Tulane lost a lot. They lost multiple defensive starters. They got a new defensive coordinator. Probably their best skill guy, best playmaker outside of Pratt, Tajay Spears. Their running back is gone, departed for the NFL. Good player. And some of their most productive wideouts are gone. Outside of Pratt, them coming off the big win against USC in the Cotton Bowl, a lot of it's hype, man. And I love what Willie Fritz does at Tulane. One of the more underrated jobs every year. They won the AAC last year. They won the American last year, and they may do it again, but I don't think they're ready to go beat a team like Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is going to put a ton of points up. I think it's a game Ole Miss is kind of like, yeah, we hear people think we're going to lose this game. I think Kiffin kind of has this game circled. But again, if Siskey brought up, if I'm Ole Miss fans, the game I'm worried about is the next week, Georgia Tech, first-year staff with Brent Key coming to town, because it's the week right before Alabama, and it's sandwiched in between the quote-unquote big non-conference game against Tulane. I don't think it's a big non-conference game. I will be shocked if Ole Miss straight up loses this game. Tulane has a lot of holes, man. They have a lot of holes. And Ole Miss has plenty of talent to run them out of their own stadium. Think about it. All the Ole Miss fans are going to come in groves. All the Mississippi Gulf Coast Ole Miss fans are going to be there. I mean, that stadium would be painted in red and blue, probably some powder blue now with the way Ole Miss mixes up their colors. But, man, I am very confident Ole Miss gets this done. So, therefore, that's why the September 9th matchup in New Orleans is my second highest confident game of any teams in the SEC this year. Ole Miss at Tulane. I think Ole Miss gets this win easily. And heading to the my number one most confident game of the 2023 SEC football season, the September 30th matchup, South Carolina at Tennessee. I've mentioned before, Tennessee is a veteran team with 32 seniors on the entire roster. You better believe it. Josh Heupel and those seniors are not going to forget about that South Carolina took their college playoff berth away from them last year. Just got destroyed. Tennessee rolled in there with their orange helmets and just got destroyed. There were rumors bounced around that the defense and offense got into it. Joe Milton, Jeremy Banks got into it the week of. Defense didn't want to play for the offense. Sound like there's some turmoil. I don't know if there's any truth to that. You see it posted. Tennessee fans like to believe it. I don't know if it is or not. But it is what it is. You also better believe those Tennessee fans have not forgotten about this game either. You talk to any Tennessee fans, my in-laws are Tennessee people. They bring this game up. This is a game the team and the fans, because this game's going to be in Neyland Stadium in Knoxville. South Carolina's walking into a buzzsaw here. And it's been a long time since I've been this confident in a single game. But I just don't see any way South Carolina rolls into Knoxville and leaves with a W. There's just no way. Therefore, this is my number one most confident game the 2023 SEC season. South Carolina heading to Knoxville, and Tennessee, I could see this being a complete blowout. I could see this game, Tennessee doing what they want. Tennessee, this is a game, Tennessee's getting to that point a little bit. They had this game circled all offseason. I'm sure this one in Georgia, and I'm sure Alabama too, but really this one. These guys took away our playoff berth, guys. The same quarterback who threw for 6 touchdowns against us was counting him on a finger. Embarrassed us. They come to our house this year. We owe them one. I think Tennessee's going to owe them a big one. I'm very confident Tennessee gets this done. But that wraps up my top 5 most confident games of the 2023 SEC season. Just recapping it, number 5, the November 4th matchup, Kentucky visiting Starkville, Mississippi, Davis-Wade Stadium. Trap game for Kentucky here, sandwiched in between the big emotional game against Tennessee and Alabama coming to town the next week. The trip to Starkville, I think, has just an emotional drain game written all over it. I think Mississippi State gets this done. I think this is one of Zach Arnett's biggest wins of the season. Then my 4th most confident game, October 21st, third Saturday in October, Tennessee at Alabama. I think this is one of those games Alabama and Nick Saban has circled. I think the Bryant-Denny Stadium crowd is going to be rocking the third Saturday in October rivalry. After 16 years, I think it's got some freshness to it. Alabama feels like, all right, they want to come play again a little bit. I think this is a game Alabama has circled. I'm confident the Tide gets it done. My 3rd most confident game, the November 18th matchup. Some may call this random. Florida at Missouri, not high on the Gators. It's going to be cold late November in Columbia. Second last game of the year. I think Florida's going to be not at a bowl contention. I haven't won in 4 games. They won this and beat Florida State. They'd go to a bowl. But these guys aren't just looking to go get a bowl trip. Again, it's going to be cold. They're going to be trying to look next week. They're going to be, man, if we can just beat Florida State. They're going to be looking towards the Florida State. Florida guys don't like going to play in the cold. Therefore, I'm confident. I think Missouri is going to be a good football team, and I think by then they'll have that quarterback situation figured out. So I'm confident the Missouri Tigers get it done against the Gators at home on that November 18th matchup for my 3rd most confident game this year. My 2nd, we're going out of conference. We're going to the Big Easy. Ole Miss at Tulane. The national media is trying to trick you into pretending this is going to be a close game. If you can go get a line right now, if you can go get a line in Vegas, go load up on the Rebels. I don't want to waste your time. I would look it up, but we'd sit here for a minute. Go load up on Ole Miss. Go load up on Ole Miss. Michael, Tulane is hype right now coming off the Cotton Bowl win against USC. Michael Pratt, the quarterback, who's a great player, is back. And again, no disrespect to Willie Fritz. I apologize. I wanted to call him 3 different Willies. Willie Fritz does a fantastic job at Tulane. They're replacing a ton of guys on defense. New defensive coordinator. Lost their best running back and their best receivers. Ole Miss is going to put up a lot of points on Tulane. A lot of points. It's going to be a predominantly Ole Miss crowd in New Orleans that week. I'm telling you that I am so confident in Ole Miss game. And then finally, if I could be any more confident than my number 2 pick, Ole Miss over Tulane, it's the revenge game. South Carolina on September 30th, heading to Neyland Stadium in Knoxville. The veteran Tennessee team, Josh Heupel, they're going to want payback for South Carolina knocking them out of the college football playoff last year. This game for Tennessee fans is going to be similar to probably the Alabama atmosphere. I would just be shocked if South Carolina leaves Knoxville with a W. So I'm very confident in this Tennessee game, or Tennessee getting it done against South Carolina and getting the revenge against Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks this year. But that's it for today's episode. That's it for today. I thought we brought a lot to you. We brought a lot of camp intel. We showed you even a little construction site. You better get your hard hat on if you're going to Nashville this weekend for the Hawaii Vanderbilt game, because they're still not done constructing stuff in that end zone. But hey, it's positive. Vanderbilt football is moving in the right direction with Clark Lee adding on to the stadium. We showed you that. We got Tyler Siskey on. Unique perspective of X's and O's, wide receivers. Why are wide receivers? Why are they dropping more footballs now? Like, I feel like this is one of the few camps where head coaches have publicly come out in press conferences and make, hey, a lot of this isn't on our quarterbacks. This is a lot of wide receivers. We dropped balls today. Tyler Siskey brought up the jug machine exercises or drills he did. I thought those were interesting. He also mentioned the dynamic of how he would build a roster in modern college football now. He'd seen it on the personnel side with Hugh Freeze and Nick Saban. Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss, Nick Saban at Alabama. Great guest. Hope you enjoyed that one. And then finally, my top 5 most confident games in the SEC this year. I just went through them again. But I had a fun time doing this episode. I hope you had a fun time joining us. We'll break down. We got football Saturday. We'll have our first breakdown of the season. Vanderbilt and Hawaii on Thursday, along with some other stuff. Special guests. We'll have somebody on as well. But I appreciate you joining us on this episode of Mock 10 Sports. I hope you have a great rest of your week.